to the second video recorded episode of INNterviews with the MVPs, a segment from Imperial News Network, your home for all things Star Citizen. Remember, if we don't report it, it didn't happen. Ever. With you now is Silence. This time, we're interrogating a creator of something rather fun, a Star Citizen RPG, PurgatorialFlame, the guy down in that direction. There we go. Was recently given his MVP for that very system, and it's got some interesting ideas. You definitely have a solid start for an RPG system, and you spent time crafting the rules, sheets, items, and if I'm right, you even take a lot of input from people from the Reddit forums, etc., correct?
Yeah, definitely. I've been getting actually quite a lot of messages from people asking me clarity on systems. They want more stuff. I've been getting quite a lot of people asking, how's the shipyard expansion going, all that sort of stuff. It's brilliant.
That's pretty cool. So I am curious, the name PurgatorialFlame, just too cool in heaven or something?
No. This was something like 10 years ago, when you're trying to create a gamer name and all of them are taken and you're like, oh, what can I do? And you play around with words.
You're not the first person. There was I think it was actually Canadian Syrup was actually just talking about that in the last video interview, where that's why he ended up going with that name. So how long have you been following Star Citizen?
It was just after the Kickstarter ended. My friend was a major Wing Commander fan, and he told me about it. And then I found out that Chris Roberts made Freelancer, and Freelancer is one of my all-time favorites. So I was just like, okay, I have to get in on this. So
Well, there you go. Freelancer. So what did you enjoy about Freelancer, and is it with Star Citizen, is it because of the comparisons to Freelancer, or is there something else that actually drew you to the game?
It was just for Freelancer, like really stood out, like just the whole aspect of it. I really enjoyed being able to go out and select my ship and then go out and mine for a couple hours or restart the game, go as a bounty hunter, play the campaign that way. It was the freedom of it. And also I'm a huge fan of CryEngine. So as soon as I found out that it was basically Freelancer with CryEngine, I was just like, oh, this is the game I've been looking for.
Good reason. But is there anything else that drew you to Star Citizen just beside being CryEngine?
Oh, I'm a huge sci-fi fan. I absolutely love everything sci-fi. I just if when I walk into a bookstore and I see there's a sci-fi book, I have to hold myself back. Otherwise, I'll pick it up and go to the counter.
I can definitely understand that one. I have a similar problem with sci-fi. I think my biggest one is probably Star Wars is the one that is really my Achilles heel of sci-fi, even though it's not really or traditional. Are you more of a fan of the traditional sci-fi or the space opera? Like, what is your particular favorite, if any?
Pretty much all of them. Like it's so hard. I've been again a huge Star Wars fan since I was a kid. I was rewatching the Gunbuster series. It's an anime from the 80s or 90s. I can't remember exactly when, but it's an old sci-fi series that really used a lot of those like classic sci-fi storylines or hooks where, with time dilation and all that sort of stuff. So I was rewatching that and I was really enjoying it.
You said that one was called Gunbuster?
Yeah, Gunbuster. It's quite old.
I'll have to take a look at that one. Thank you very much for that. So, do you have a background in game design, RPG games, something of that nature, or was this just kind of your first attempt?
I made my first RP system a few years ago when I was at university. I really enjoy franchises and universes, and it makes me sad when they don't get like an RP system. I mean, Star Wars is big enough to get several, whereas smaller franchises or things that are not traditionally fit that field get them. So I started this idea of actually building systems tailored for various franchises, and the first one I tried was actually a Naruto system, and it was a huge success. I ended up having 16 players spread across 4 sessions a week. It was pretty much I was playing more RP than actual studying, but yeah.
Well, that can be the fun of university at times. I had my semesters where it was just probably spending more time doing other things than I was studying, but it's the fun of it, right? So,
Yeah.
what other systems did you do besides the Naruto one and obviously the Star Citizen one?
Um, those are the only two that I've like fully made out. Others I've sort of started and then dropped either because I lost interest or I felt like it wasn't working out, that sort of thing.
Okay. So, how did you come up with the idea of going with the Star Citizen one? You just saw the fact that it was Star Citizen, and you're like, "There's no RPG yet. I must create this," or was there something else that spurred you on towards it?
I felt like it would make a great contrast with the current game because, as we all know, it's the characters are nearly identical, except for like a few aesthetic choices. Um, Whereas an RP system is pretty much all about the characters. So I figured if I made it felt like an interesting challenge for to take on Star Citizen because that way it's not just playing a tabletop version of Star Citizen. It's got its own sort of unique aspect where you build a character with a history and skill sets and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And
Oh, go.
oh yeah, and also another thing, the whole reason I created this system was my brother and his wife. They have their backers as well, but they don't know anything about Star Citizen. And back at Christmas, I said to them, "Hey, if you want me to build an RP system, you just let me know which franchise." And they said, "Well, you love Star Citizen. Why don't you make a system for it? And that way we can learn all the lore and how everything works by playing an RP." And I was just like, "This is brilliant."
Yeah, that actually is a really good way to introduce people to Star Citizen, especially just well, if they might be fans of RPGs or just I mean in general, it tends to be easier to learn through a game than just straight rote memorization or whatever have you.
Yeah.
And which is ironic when we consider the fact that we're talking about a game, but there's a lot of information for Star Citizen. I mean,
Oh yeah,
really is getting astounding.
it's got so much lore to it. One of my favorite parts of the RP book was actually breaking down and uh, summarizing the lore sections for what I could to get people started.
Oh yeah, I think there's isn't there like a Google document somewhere that's just an entire spreadsheet of links and lore? I mean, it's
Jeez, I need to find that.
I think I actually have a link to it. I'll see if I can find it afterward and send it to you because it's pretty intense the amount of lore that Star Citizen is building up. So I can definitely see how someone just getting into it, if they're interested in lore, how it would be such a just a huge thing to just try and understand the lore, let alone what CIG is actually saying about things and what's being promised or whatever have you. So it's a fun way to learn about the lore. Did you use a particular system for it? Did you design your own, or did you base it off of a different system? For instance, like a D20, D6, whatever.
Now, the closest I wanted to go with a D6 because in the Naruto campaign I made, I ran with percentiles, so I wanted to try something a little bit new. And when I picked up the D6, I immediately thought of World of Darkness. So I pulled out a few characters from that system, and the one thing I absolutely loved about the character sheets was just looking at them, and you can tell this is an old character. You can see through the dots how they've grown and changed. And I that was what I took across was the dot system to when you level up.
Yeah, because I thought
And
that isn't World of Darkness a D10, not a D6?
um, yep, yeah, absolutely right. I I yeah, actually, you can tell it's been a while since I played World of
Well, yeah,
Darkness.
no, I completely understand. No, the dot system, as you were mentioning, that really did remind me
Yeah.
of the World of Darkness. I was just curious if you went with D6 for any particular reason, or if you were just like,
Oh,
oh
that
yeah,
no, the D6s, sorry, was because I wanted to play around with this idea of um, shifting the meaning of the faces on the dice. So, having the five and sixes as success and the ones as failures, and then the conditions mixing that up a bit. So it adds a little bit more spice to a dice roll.
of course, it makes sense.
And having a D10 makes it way too varied.
Oh yeah, it really can. I remember that World of Darkness. I mean, it gets a little convoluted because it's like this is the number that you're supposed to hit, and anything above this is a success, anything below that's a failure. But then it starts just drastically varying, and then you're counting through dice, and before you know it, you're having to borrow other people's because you're having to roll 20 of the darn things, and you're just like, why is this taking longer than D&D? I thought this was supposed to be faster.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, D&D in itself, you get into some of those RPG games, and a round of combat is taking 10, 20 minutes. So
Oh, yeah, the best is when you're sitting there and there's that one guy who's got the rule book open in front of them and is going, well, you see, because the time of day matches the special function of my sword, I get a 0.33 bonus. You know, and you're just sitting there going, can we just move on?
Exactly. Oh, they get a little crazy. In regards to yours, though, what was the most difficult part of creating the RPG book?
Getting the actual layouts done, because I've spent years playing around in Photoshop, but I don't have that much experience in, I've forgotten the name now, it's slipped out of my mind, but it's the Adobe product that actually lets you build full-on books in an easy fashion. It's gone from my mind now, but I don't have enough experience in that to confidently use it. So I decided to go stay with what I knew, which was Photoshop, which was an absolute pain because it's every single page has its own Photoshop file, and you can imagine it was a lot of work just getting all the base stuff and style set. And once that was done, then it was a lot easier to get through.
Right, but so you'd say just using Adobe Photoshop to create each page because you didn't know the other software, probably the toughest part.
Yes. So with Photoshop, most of my experience with it has been sketching and drawing and that sort of thing. And then last year, I actually spent 6 months working at Riot Games and as a community intern. And that was where I got to really like start pushing what I could do with the program. And it actually helped because I started getting experience making documents, even though I was using the hardware. So,
would you say that was an influence on why you chose Photoshop over the Adobe product?
Yes, it is. It is.
Son of a. See, there's always one. There's always one. And the worst part is I use Photoshop, so I know it's an Adobe product. And I'm like,
InDesign. That was it. InDesign.
InDesign?
That was the Adobe InDesign. That's the one that I should be using, but I have no experience in it, so I couldn't.
I don't know if I don't think I've used InDesign either. That's one that you said is used for creating books?
Yeah, it's the sort of like the publisher version.
So
if
someone wanted to do like an RPG system, another person, whatever, what advice would you give them? Would you be like, learn the software, don't do what I did with Adobe or something else?
Okay, so the thing I would say is you have to have a clear goal for what you want the system to be like, and always try to keep it simple. Because even the simplest rules, you start finding edge cases, and then it suddenly starts getting more and more out of control, especially if you start off with a very complicated system, as I learned before. So that would be my advice, is keep it simple and always think about how the players are going to react to this. You know, if they go, you know, if you start adding in decimal places to your dice rolls, you can imagine how the players are going to sit there going, okay.
This has gone a little far. I didn't think I'd have to use calculus for this roll.
Yeah.
So besides your revision to 1.1, when you started off doing this whole system, was there anything that changed along the way as you were designing it?
The 1.1 was probably the biggest change. I got so much feedback that I was just like, oh my good. There are things that reveal itself that hadn't even come to me, even in my test cases. And I was just like, how did I not notice that rolling one dice was going to make you either crit succeed or crit fail? And that was a bit of a shocker. I was like, how did I let this through into the version 1 to begin with? So
how much do you think you'll keep updating this RPG system? Like how often, or just how far are you planning on going?
I'm really happy with it. I've gotten so much feedback there. A lot of things I want to add and expand on, and especially when CIG starts releasing more info, then I can, for example, build up that items list, because I was sitting there trying to create items going, what am I need more. Also, I'm trying to, with the updates, I'm trying to include the page numbers, because I've had quite a few players messaging me saying, oh, by the way, I'm translating your rulebook into French and into German, and so my friends can play it. And I was really surprised when I started getting that. So I realized that I can't make sweeping changes with each version. I have to be very careful. Otherwise, people are going to end up reprinting it over and over and over. So
you're trying to
yeah.
make sure that it stays fairly concise, and like the page numbers don't change much for people
Yeah,
that are translating.
that's also a problem with Photoshop. If I add on an extra page, then all the other previous ones then have to start changing.
Yeah, and then you have to go
So,
down and you're like, now this number turns to 7.
yeah.
Oh, geez. What sort of changes do you think that we will see besides, or will it mostly just be items lists, or do you think that you'll continue to refine the rules a bit more?
I actually already have a
You have a change
document.
list?
I already have a change list of stuff that I'm going to work on. Let me just quickly open up. Sorry if I just lit up.
No, it's fine.
Where is it? And of course, my internet decides to. Okay, what I do is I write up everything in a Google Docs.
Okay.
And I read through it, so I don't even touch the shiny fancy stuff. I make sure everything's got here it is, 1.2. Oh, it's loading. Let's see. So, for example, I need to clarify the resistance roles. I've had quite a few messages of people saying, so how exactly does composure and resolve differ?
Okay.
So that's for example, that's one of the things.
Okay. And so that's the sort of changes we can expect to see in the future with your RPG book?
Yeah.
Of clarification.
A lot more clarification, yeah.
Okay. Is there any particular aspect that you wanted to add originally, but you just couldn't find a good way to put the rules in, or just the details weren't working out right?
The ships. I really wanted to include the shipyard as part of the full release, but I realized that it was a daunting process. It had already taken me 3 months to get to this point, and I was looking at the ships going, that's a lot of work, and I don't know the full details for every single ship. So I'm still working on how to integrate ships in a unique way that's different to regular combat. And now I've spaced out.
Well, as far as the shipyard, for instance, what was it that was really difficult to try and integrate? What about it made it something that you were like, okay, I can't put this in right now. I got to spend some more time really thinking about how I want to integrate this to the RPG book?
Well, it's because of how important ships are to Star Citizen. It would be almost criminal to just do a rush job on how ships function and then have to overhaul all that previous work when I do go back to revising it. So I felt the best thing to do is have a temporary solution that's relatively easy to understand because it's similar to how normal combat functions, and then really spend some time sitting down and just figuring out how to make ships a unique experience within a roleplay, because the ships deserve to have a lot of effort put into them so that they pay tribute to the original material.
Oh, of course. Do you plan on actually releasing it as a addendum to the original book, or do you actually think you might release it as a separate book itself?
Yeah, as a separate rulebook, absolutely. It would be like an expansion.
Right.
So players, that way then people don't have to reprint the original one all over again.
Well, yeah, that, and also if, for instance, because I imagine you're going to make the rules a bit more in depth, correct?
Yes, yeah, I'm planning on expanding it more and more.
Right. So if that's the case, then that would definitely work out nicely, because then if someone wanted to play it, but they didn't want to necessarily get that deep into the rules for the space combat, and they have a very simplistic one that you've already built. Do you plan on doing anything as far as the modification of ships, items, so on and so forth? Is that anything that you're planning on doing in the future?
That's exactly what made it so daunting, is because there's so much we can do with our ships, and also we're waiting on CIG to also implement those features. So once it arrives in the core game, then I have a point of reference to build on. Because
Well, do you plan on actually taking it further than CIG might? Because I mean, let's face it, RPGs, as far as a tabletop RPG, really allows you to go far more in depth than you could expect a computer game, just because of the fact that it's so freeform. It has that ability to use your imagination. Do you plan on going as far as you can with it, or do you plan on sticking closer to what CIG does?
Well, in the game that I'm running at the moment with my brother, he's already trying to overclock and modify and do everything like full computers. He's going a full hacking route, and and the first thing he did when he sat in the freelancer was he started immediately trying to mess around with the engines of the power system. So I definitely want to go full in depth so that there's a clear point, because otherwise storytellers are going to be like, I don't know how to handle this. My players are going crazy. So, so yeah, I definitely want to go in depth with the various components and stuff. Ideally, for the larger ships, I want to include maps as well, as we saw with the Starfarer. There's the maps to find your way around. So, if we ever have combat on these larger ships, the DM can just pull out the map and be like, okay, here's where you can cover and stuff.
Yeah, I think I saw someone on Reddit just mentioning, I think it was today or yesterday, that they got lost wandering around the Starfarer and had to Google Maps it to figure their way out. Um, like they just were like, "Oh crap, I got turned around." So you actually plan on including at least, well, as time progresses and as time permits, you plan on actually releasing some sort of floor plans for some of the ships.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, wonderful. So with that kind of all said, I guess we'll move into one of the more interesting parts to the interview, one that really shows the men from the boys and the chance to, again, make me look like an idiot for messing up. What is your favorite ship?
Freelancer, without a doubt. It's just the ties to its namesake, to the space trucker experience, and Freelancer Deux, actually, because DUI, I prefer saying the acronym, because I also love exploring. So yeah, definitely Freelancer.
Oh, did I say that it was a freelancer that someone got lost on before? Because I think it was the Starfarer.
Yeah, it was Starfarer.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I was just thinking about that. So what about the freelancer do you actually really like? What drew you to it?
I'm quite a fan of the aesthetics of the Misk line. I also have a Reliant hiding in my hangar. I'm just waiting for it to arrive. Yeah, the aesthetics, and also the slight connection to the Xi'an, Xi'an. That I like the lore of the company, as well as the ship designs and their primary functions. Like space trucker, who doesn't like that?
So is that what you actually plan on doing? Is something more along the lines of a space trucker, if you will?
Yeah, but I definitely want to get a Starfarer, and then I can just go around refueling people. That's also one of the things I'm really looking forward to.
So you plan on playing more towards the cargo aspect of the game, mercantile and everything?
Yeah, um, at the moment, dogfighting and general combat is a bit tricky because I injured my index finger, so I've had to tone down the intensity of gaming so that I don't actually continue to put strain on it, on the joints. So
It's a real
so, yeah.
shame, but I can definitely understand that. I actually enjoy a bit of that myself. It's one of the things that I did in Eve quite a bit, uh, running cargo from point A to point B and all that. What is kind of the aspect about Star Citizen that you're most excited about?
Ooh, I definitely want to do the exploring. Um, that's the just going through that first jump point is definitely going to be something to remember. So yeah, it would be the exploring and the trading, because trading in a way is also exploring, because you're going to new sites and visiting places as you're bringing cargo with you. So
Of course.
yeah.
If you had one thing that you wanted to tell the community, what would you say?
Ooh.
I like dropping the hard ones on you just out of nowhere. Just be like, hey, by the
Oh
way,
yeah.
blindsided. So no, really
Hmm.
though, what would you want to communicate to the community? Any well wishes, whatever have you, shout outs to the guild,
Um,
be like,
I
hi
would just
mom,
say
hi dad.
I would say that the thing that I really love about the community is how different it is. Like how everybody sort of comes together. I remember a few weeks ago, one of the developers or former developers' daughter fell off a wall,
Skelt.
and yeah, Skelt, that was it. And it was just incredible. By the time I'd even heard of the story, funds had been raised, and I was gobsmacked. I was just like, this community is absolutely amazing. And again, seeing the work that every MVP gets, I just go, wow, these people make so much. You could just tell how passionate everyone is about the game. So I was really surprised when they called out my name. I wasn't expecting it at all. So
Yeah, you were just mentioning the people that really contribute, and take a look. Now you can add your own name to that list. It's
yeah.
quite the achievement you got. How did you feel when you got the MVP? Was there any sort of like flailing your arms around like crazy and then like downing a shot of booze, or what was it?
I was sitting there watching around the verse, going, "Oh, this is cool. This is, and suddenly they start reading my name, and I'm like,
That is definitely the reaction I imagine most people would hope for. Of the, oh, wait, that's my name.
yeah.
Oh, is there anything else that you would like to add? By the way.
Um, no, that's about it. I'm really glad to be part of this community. I absolutely love it.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that, and uh, we definitely, speaking from a community standpoint, I imagine a lot of people are very happy that you spent the time not only to make an RPG, but that you are contributing to the community as a whole.
Mm.
You are right. It's a very amazing community that is surrounding Star Citizen, and it takes all of us to make it work.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining me for an interviews with the MVPs. Again, great having you on here, and we'll see you all in the verse.
See ya.